The snow fell thick across Lakeside on Christmas Eve, each flake catching the glow of holiday lights as Thomas Grayson adjusted his rearview mirror. The streets were near empty, most families already gathered around dinner tables or nestled before fireplaces. Thomas glanced at his son, bundled in the passenger seat, face pressed against the window. "Can we drive down Maple Street again, Dad?" Jason's breath fogged the glass as he traced shapes with his finger. "They have the best lights." Thomas checked his watch, an elegant timepiece with a worn leather strap, the only luxury he still possessed. Nearly 9 o'clock. "One more loop, buddy, then home." He turned the car slowly, tires crunching through fresh snow. The dashboard radio played Christmas carols at low volume, the announcer reminding listeners that this was shaping up to be the coldest December in 15 years. Thomas barely registered the words. December had been cold for him since Elizabeth died. Jason's face brightened as they approached Maple Street's dazzling display. The old Victorian homes competed annually for most elaborate decorations, their eaves dripping with icicle lights, lawns transformed into winter wonderlands. A massive tree stood in the town square, ornaments the size of basketballs catching and reflecting colored light in every direction. "Dad, look!" Jason pointed toward the farthest corner of the square. "Are those kids?" Thomas squinted through the windshield, wipers pushing aside heavy snow. Near the shuttered Bailey's coffee shop, two small figures huddled against the brick wall. Just mannequins for a display, he first thought. But then one of them moved. He slowed the car, something tightening in his chest. "Stay here," he told Jason, pulling to the curb. The bitter cold hit him like a wall as Thomas stepped out, zipping his coat against the wind. Approaching cautiously, he made out two small girls, perhaps 8 years old, identical in every way from their tangled blonde hair to their thin, inadequate jackets. No hats, no gloves. One clutched something that looked like a piece of bread, frozen solid. They stared up at him with hollow eyes, faces pale as the snow around them. Twins, unmistakably. The one without the bread shifted slightly, positioning herself between her sister and Thomas. "Hey there," Thomas kept his voice gentle, crouching down despite his knees protesting the cold. "Are you okay? Where are your parents?" The girls didn't answer, just watched him with identical expressions of wary fear. Up close, Thomas noticed a bruise darkening one girl's cheek, partially hidden by her hair. He glanced back at his car, where Jason pressed his face to the window, watching. Something about the scene, the snow, the lights, these abandoned children, struck Thomas with unexpected force. 3 years ago, he would have called the police immediately, driven away knowing he'd done the right thing. Now he hesitated. "I'm Thomas," he continued, unzipping his coat. "You must be freezing. Here." He slipped it off, draping it around both their shoulders. The gesture seemed to break something open. The girl without bread suddenly spoke, her voice barely audible over the distant carol music floating across the square. "Please don't take us back." Her eyes filled with tears. "She'll hurt us again." Thomas's breath caught in his throat. The girl with the bread nodded, dropping her meager food to grasp her sister's hand. "Who will hurt you?" Thomas asked, though something in him already knew, already recognized the particular fear in their eyes. "Aunt Patricia," the first girl whispered. "She gets really mad, especially at Christmas." Silent Night played faintly from the town square speakers as snowflakes landed on the children's eyelashes. Thomas looked back at his car, at Jason's worried face, then at these two fragile girls with nowhere to go on Christmas Eve. "Would you like to come somewhere warm?" he asked. "Just for tonight. No one will hurt you." The girls exchanged a glance, some silent communication passing between them. Finally, the slightly bolder one nodded. "I'm Lucy," she said. "This is Lily." Thomas helped them stand, their legs trembling from cold and fear. As he guided them toward his car, Lucy's whispered words floated back to him on the snowy air. "She marks us sometimes, so we'll remember who we belong to." Thomas hadn't always been a man who stopped for strangers in snowstorms. 3 years earlier, his life had run on predictable tracks. Senior accountant at Marshall Financial, mortgage on a Victorian in the good part of town, vacations planned 6 months in advance. He and Elizabeth had met in college, married at 24, built careers in parallel. Their son Jason arrived after 5 years of trying, their miracle baby, as Elizabeth always called him. The headaches started when Jason turned 6. Migraines, Elizabeth thought at first, pushing through pain to meet client deadlines. By the time doctors identified the rare tumor pressing against her brainstem, options were already limited. Experimental treatments bought months, not years. Thomas remembered the night she made him promise, her hand cool and light in his, monitors beeping softly in the background. "Promise you'll open your heart again," she'd whispered. "Jason needs more than just a father who works and sleeps." Thomas had nodded, unable to speak. But after the funeral, he'd withdrawn instead, taking comfort in figures and spreadsheets that never asked for emotional honesty. When Marshall Financial downsized, offering a generous severance, Thomas took it without protest. The Victorian went next. Too many memories, too much space, too much Elizabeth in every corner. He and Jason moved to a small rental on the other side of town, and Thomas cobbled together delivery shifts, night stocking at grocery stores, weekend tax preparation, anything that would cover bills while allowing him maximum time with Jason. Now, as Thomas pulled away from the coffee shop with 3 children in his car, he glanced at the watch Elizabeth had given him on their last anniversary. The inscription on the back read, "Time is the most precious thing we have. Spend it with love." She'd known even then that hers was running out. "Dad?" Jason's voice broke through Thomas's thoughts. "Are they okay?" Thomas nodded, watching in the rearview mirror as Jason immediately pulled off his own hat and scarf, offering them to the girls. Lucy and Lily took them hesitantly, as if expecting the gifts to be snatched back. "We're going to get them warm, buddy, then figure out next steps." The twins sat perfectly still, shoulders touching, eyes fixed on the passing lights. Thomas noticed how they flinched when a car honked nearby, how their thin fingers gripped each other's hands. The accountant part of his brain was already cataloging problems, possible criminal implications of taking minors without authorization, mandatory reporting laws, the system these girls would enter if he called the authorities tonight. The father in him saw only 2 children who needed help. Their small rental house looked shabby as Thomas pulled into the driveway, nothing like the magnificent homes they'd just driven past. But it was warm, the lights were on, and no one inside would hurt these girls tonight. "Come on in," Thomas said, opening the back door. "We'll get you something hot to drink." The twins moved in perfect synchrony, following several steps behind Thomas, eyeing the modest house as if it might be a trap. Jason ran ahead, already explaining where the bathroom was, offering to show them his room, his excitement at unexpected Christmas Eve visitors overwhelming his usual shyness. While Thomas prepared hot chocolate, he heard Jason's voice from the living room. "You can borrow my slippers. I have 2 pairs. They might be big, but they're warm." When Thomas carried 4 steaming mugs into the room, he found Jason showing the girls his prized Lego spaceship. Lucy and Lily sat side by side on the couch, still touching shoulders. But their eyes followed Jason's enthusiastic demonstration with cautious interest. Thomas set the mugs on the coffee's table and finally got a proper look at the twins in the light. What he saw made his stomach clench. Beyond the obvious bruise on Lucy's cheek, both girls showed signs of neglect. Their clothes were clean but worn thin at the elbows and knees. Their blonde hair, though tangled now, had been cut in identical severe bobs. But most troubling were the smaller signs. How they waited until Thomas nodded before reaching for the hot chocolate. How they held themselves rigidly even when seated. How their eyes constantly tracked his movements around the room. "It's okay," Thomas said softly. "You're safe here." The girls exchanged another of their silent communications before Lily spoke for the first time, her voice slightly higher than her sister's. "Until when?" The question hung in the air, heartbreaking in its practicality. These weren't children worried about Christmas presents. These were children who calculated safety in hours. "Tonight for certain," Thomas answered honestly, "and I promise, whatever happens next, I won't let anyone hurt you again." Jason, sensing the gravity in the room, set down his spaceship. "My dad always keeps his promises," he said with absolute conviction. "Always." The twins seemed to relax slightly at Jason's certainty. Lucy took a small sip of hot chocolate, then another. When she spoke again, her voice was stronger. "We ran away before last summer. The police found us and took us right back." Her eyes darkened with the memory. She was so angry afterward. Thomas kept his expression neutral despite the rage building inside him. "This time will be different," he said simply. As the evening progressed, Thomas made up the pull-out sofa with fresh sheets. He found an old t-shirt of Elizabeth's he couldn't bear to donate, offering it to the girls as a nightgown. Jason insisted on giving them his second-best stuffed bear, placing it carefully between them on the makeshift bed. While Thomas tucked Jason in, his son's eyes were serious in the glow of his space-themed nightlight. "They could stay with us, right, Dad? Like forever?" Thomas smoothed Jason's dark hair, so like his mother's. "It's not that simple, buddy." "Why not?" Jason persisted. "We have the extra room, we have food, They need a family." "Sometimes the best families are the ones we choose," Jason added, repeating something Elizabeth used to say. The words struck Thomas with unexpected force, his wife's wisdom emerging from his son's mouth. "Get some sleep," Thomas whispered, kissing Jason's forehead. "Tomorrow's Christmas." After Jason's breathing deepened into sleep, Thomas returned to the living room. The twins were still awake, sitting up in the pull-out bed, holding a whispered conversation that stopped the moment he appeared. "I'm just across the hall if you need anything," he told them, adjusting the thermostat higher. As he turned to leave, Lucy's voice stopped him. "Mr. Thomas, we have something for you to see." Lily reached into the pocket of her jacket, folded neatly over the arm of the couch, and withdrew a crumpled piece of paper. She smoothed it with careful fingers before holding it out. Thomas took it, expecting perhaps a note explaining who they were. Instead, he found an address written in careful cursive, followed by a name, Katherine Mason. Below that, in different handwriting, a child's, were the words, "Mom's friend, safe person." "Who is Katherine Mason?" Thomas asked. "Mom's best friend," Lucy answered. "Mom gave us this before the accident. Said if we were ever scared or hurt, we should find Katherine." "We tried once," Lily added, "but Aunt Patricia caught us at the bus station." She tore up the original paper. "I remade this one from memory." Thomas carefully refolded the paper. "We'll try to find her tomorrow," he promised, tucking it into his wallet. "Try to get some sleep now, okay?" After the girls finally settled, Thomas sat at the kitchen table, mind racing. His laptop glowed as he searched for information about abandoned children, mandatory reporting laws, emergency foster care on Christmas. Each search result confirmed what he already suspected. If he called the authorities tonight, the twins would be immediately separated from each other and placed in emergency care. On a holiday weekend, they could spend days in a temporary facility before anyone addressed their situation properly. Thomas closed the laptop and walked to the living room doorway, watching the twins sleep. They'd automatically gravitated toward each other, foreheads nearly touching, breaths synchronized. Even in sleep, they protected one another. In his bedroom, Thomas opened the drawer of his nightstand, removing a dog-eared album. Elizabeth smiled up at him from their wedding photo, her dark hair swept up, eyes shining with possibilities. He traced her face with his fingertip. "What would you do, Liz?" he whispered to the empty room. But he already knew the answer. Morning arrived with soft snowfall and the excited pounding of Jason's feet in the hallway. Thomas intercepted him before he could burst into the living room. "Let them sleep, buddy," he whispered, guiding Jason to the kitchen. They had a rough night. While Thomas made pancakes, a Christmas tradition Elizabeth had started, Jason arranged presents under their small artificial tree. There weren't many. A science kit, a new winter coat for Jason, a few token gifts Thomas had wrapped for himself to maintain the illusion of holiday normalcy. But Jason's attention was elsewhere. "I'm giving them my backup Transformers," he announced, already retrieving the toys from his room, "and my extra colored pencils. And my blue hoodie. I have two." Thomas watched his son's generosity with a tightness in his throat. While the apartment had grown quieter and more somber after Elizabeth's death, Jason's capacity for compassion had only expanded. "Dad?" Jason paused in his gift gathering. "Does Santa know they're here now for presents?" The innocent question hung in the air. "I think Santa will understand," Thomas finally answered, "but their best present is being safe and warm." By the time the twins woke, Jason had assembled a small pile of his own treasures beside each of their plates at the table. Their eyes widened at the sight of pancakes shaped like snowmen, complete with chocolate chip buttons and strawberry scarves. "Merry Christmas," Thomas said, setting down maple syrup. "Eat up while they're hot." The girls approached the table cautiously, looking to Thomas for permission before sitting. They ate with the deliberate care of children accustomed to having food taken away, cutting each bite into tiny pieces, chewing slowly. "These are for you," Jason explained, pointing to the gifts he'd gathered. "My dad says Santa might not know you're here, but I think these are better than Santa presents anyway." Lucy touched a blue plastic robot reverently. "We're allowed to have these?" "Of course," Jason said, as if the question made no sense. "They're presents. For Christmas." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "We haven't had Christmas since Mom and Dad died." The simple statement landed like a stone in still water. Thomas set down his coffee mug. "Would you like to tell us about them? Your mom and dad?" The twins exchanged their now familiar glance before Lucy nodded. "Dad was a music teacher," she began. "He taught piano at the community college. Mom was an artist. She painted murals in people's houses. They met at a charity event for the children's hospital. They died in a car accident," Lily continued, her voice dropping. "2 years ago, it was raining really hard. A truck couldn't stop in time. After the funeral, Aunt Patricia said we had to live with her," Lucy added. "She's our mom's sister, but she always hated Mom. She says we look too much like Mom, and it makes her angry," Lily whispered. "She gets really mad when she drinks the special water." Thomas recognized the euphemism immediately. Alcohol. The familiar story of addiction and abuse sent a chill through him despite the warm kitchen. "Does Aunt Patricia have a husband? Other family?" he asked carefully. "Uncle James," Lucy confirmed. "He travels a lot for business. He's nicer, but he never stops her when she gets mad." "She has friends who come over for parties," Lily added. "They drink the special water too. They pretend we don't exist." As the girls continued sharing fragments of their life with Patricia, Thomas felt the weight of their situation settling onto his shoulders. This wasn't a one-night emergency. This was systematic abuse that had been happening for years, hidden behind closed doors, masked by a veneer of middle-class respectability. Jason listened silently, his expression increasingly troubled. Finally, he slipped from his chair, retrieving a drawing pad from his room. He returned and wordlessly placed it before the twins, open to a picture he'd drawn months ago. 4 stick figures holding hands, a tall man, a woman with long dark hair, and 2 children. "I keep drawing my mom even though she's gone," he explained simply. "I don't want to forget what our family looked like." Lily touched the drawing gently. "We don't have any pictures of our mom and dad anymore. Aunt Patricia threw them away." Thomas watched the 3 children bonding over their losses, Jason showing the twins his other family drawings, the girls examining each with solemn attention. Across the kitchen counter, his phone seemed to grow heavier with each passing minute. He needed to make a call, but not to child services, not yet. He waited until the children were absorbed in examining Jason's Lego collection before stepping into his bedroom, closing the door partway. The contact was still in his phone, though they hadn't spoken in over a year. Laura Rodriguez. They'd attended the same college, shared accounting classes before Laura changed her major to criminal justice. She'd sent flowers when Elizabeth died, checked in periodically afterward. Now, as chief of police in Lakeside, she might be these girls' best hope for justice without further trauma. Laura answered on the 3rd ring. "Thomas, Merry Christmas. Everything okay?" Thomas exhaled slowly. "Not exactly. I need your help, unofficially at first." He explained the situation concisely, his accountant's precision cutting through emotion to deliver facts. Laura listened without interrupting. "You should have called 911 last night," she finally said, though her tone held more concern than accusation. "But I understand why you didn't. These girls trust you now." "What happens if I call it in officially?" Thomas asked, though he already knew. "Standard protocol, emergency placement, probably in separate homes given the holiday staffing. Investigation will start, but it could take weeks." Laura paused. "But if I come over first, assess the situation personally, we might have more options." Relief washed through Thomas. "How soon can you get here?" "Give me an hour. Don't tell the girls I'm coming. I don't want them to panic." After hanging up, Thomas returned to the living room to find Jason showing the twins his mother's old piano keyboard, set up in the corner but rarely used these days. Lily ran her fingers over the keys without pressing down, a look of longing on her face. "Did you play piano like your dad?" Thomas asked. Lily nodded. "He was teaching us. I was better at it than Lucy." "I was better at painting," Lucy countered, the first hint of sibling rivalry breaking through their united front. As the morning progressed, Thomas observed subtle differences between the twins. Lucy was slightly more outspoken, positioned herself protectively, carried herself with a wariness that suggested she'd taken the brunt of their aunt's anger to shield her sister. Lily was quieter, more introspective, flinched at sudden movements. Both showed signs of hypervigilance. Both apologized reflexively for minor things, sitting on the couch, asking for water, existing in the space. When Laura's unmarked police car pulled into the driveway, Thomas felt a surge of anxiety. He'd prepped Jason, explaining that his friend was coming to help the twins, but the girls themselves remained unaware. He watched their faces as the doorbell rang. Instant terror, followed by calculation. They were already mapping escape routes, preparing excuses. "It's okay," Thomas assured them. "This is my friend Laura. She's going to help make sure you never have to go back to your aunt." Laura Rodriguez entered with deliberate casualness, wearing civilian clothes rather than her uniform, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She took in the scene with practiced eyes. The twins huddled together on the couch, Jason hovering nearby, Thomas's tense posture. "Hi there," she said, crouching down to the girl's eye levels. "I'm Laura. Thomas tells me you had a rough night." The twins said nothing, years of adult betrayal evident in their silence. "I'm the police chief here in Lakeside," Laura continued honestly. "But today I'm just here to talk. No one's in trouble." Lucy's shoulders relaxed fractionally. "Are you going to make us go back?" Laura's expression remained neutral. "Not today. Right now, I'd just like to ask you some questions. Would that be okay?" The conversation that followed broke Thomas's heart. With gentle but direct questioning, Laura drew out details the girls had withheld earlier. The basement punishment room, the lessons involving belt and wooden spoon, the nights locked in closets, the missed meals, the public performances of perfect family life when others were watching. Laura documented everything, taking photographs of visible bruises with the twins' permission. Thomas kept Jason occupied in another room during the worst of it, though he knew his son had already intuited much of the truth. "There's one more thing we need to do," Laura finally said. "I'd like a doctor to examine you, just to make sure you're healthy and to document any injuries properly." The twins' fear returned instantly. "No hospitals," Lucy said firmly. "Aunt Patricia works at the hospital." "Memorial Hospital?" Laura clarified. When Lucy nodded, Laura continued, "We can go to Ridgeview instead. It's in the next town over. She won't know." After much coaxing, the twins agreed. Thomas helped them bundle up in jackets still too large, borrowed hats pulled down over their ears. As they prepared to leave, Lily suddenly stopped, her face pale. "Our Christmas present," she whispered to Lucy. "We forgot to show him." Lucy's eyes widened. She ran to the pull-out couch, reaching beneath the pillow to withdraw a folded paper. Unlike the first note, this was clearly a child's drawing. Two stick figures with yellow hair standing beside a house. "We made this for you," Lucy explained, handing it to Thomas. "To say thank you." Thomas accepted the simple drawing with a lump in his throat. "It's beautiful," he managed. "Thank you." The twins insisted Thomas and Jason accompany them to the hospital, gripping Thomas's hands as they entered the emergency room. Laura had called ahead, securing a private examination room and a pediatrician she trusted, Dr. Helen Chen, who specialized in abuse cases. Chen approached the twins with the perfect blend of professional distance and genuine warmth. "I'm just going to check you over," she explained. "You can stop me anytime you feel uncomfortable." Thomas and Jason waited in an adjoining room, Jason flipping through worn magazines without seeing them, Thomas staring at the institutional clock on the wall, marking each slow minute. When Dr. Chen emerged an hour later, her expression was carefully composed, but Thomas recognized the controlled anger in her eyes. She gestured him into the hallway, voice low. "The physical abuse is extensive and systematic," she reported clinically. "Multiple healing fractures, cigarette burns, belt marks, malnourishment. But Lily has something I'm particularly concerned about." She handed Thomas a photograph. "This is a brand, literally burned into her skin with a heated metal object." The letter P. Thomas stared at the image, nausea rising. On Lily's lower back, a crude letter P had been seared into her flesh, the scar tissue raised and discolored. Patricia, he whispered. She marked her. Dr. Chen nodded grimly. This crosses every line. We're well beyond simple abuse charges now. This is torture. Laura joined them, reviewing Chen's findings. I'm calling Judge Harmon right now, she decided. We need an emergency protection order before this woman realizes they're missing and flees. As Laura stepped away to make calls, a commotion erupted from the nurse's station. A woman's voice, insistent and professional, cut through the hospital's quiet efficiency. I'm looking for twin girls, approximately 8 years old, blonde hair, blue eyes. I received a call they might have been brought here. Thomas peered down the hallway to see a woman in her late 30s, dark hair pulled into a neat bun, wearing scrubs with a children's hospital logo. Her face was tight with worry, eyes scanning each passing person. Chen tensed. That's not Patricia Reynolds. I know her from medical conferences. Who is that? Thomas's hand went to his wallet, withdrawing the crumpled paper. Katherine Mason, he read, looking back at the approaching woman. Their mother's friend. Katherine spotted them, hurrying forward. Excuse me, she began, then stopped abruptly, noticing the photograph still in Thomas's hand, her face drained of color. You found them, she whispered, voice breaking. You actually found them. Laura returned, instantly alert to the newcomer. Ma'am, I need you to identify yourself. Katherine straightened, collecting herself with visible effort. Katherine Mason, I'm a pediatric nurse at Memorial. I was Marie Foster's best friend. I've been looking for her daughters for almost 2 years. How did you know they were here? Laura asked, suspicion evident. Emergency room gossip travels fast, Katherine admitted. A colleague texted that twin girls with suspected abuse had been brought to Ridgeview. I've been following every lead like this since Marie died. Dr. Chen studied Katherine carefully. I can verify her identity if needed. Katherine Mason is well regarded at Memorial. Katherine's professional composure crumbled slightly. Please, are they okay? Can I see them? Before Laura could answer, the examination room door opened. Lily peered out, now dressed in clean hospital scrubs, her face lighting up with recognition. Miss Katie, she cried, a genuine smile transforming her face. Katherine knelt as both twins rushed toward her, gathering them in a careful embrace. I've been looking everywhere for you, she whispered, tears streaming freely now. I promised your mother I'd watch over you, and I've failed you for 2 years. Thomas watched the reunion, something shifting in his chest. For the first time since finding the girls in the snow, he felt the weight lifting slightly. Here was someone else who cared, someone with a legitimate connection to their past. Katherine looked up, meeting Thomas's eyes over the girls' heads. Something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps, of shared purpose. Two adults with their own painful histories, drawn together by children who needed them. Thank you, Katherine mouthed silently. Thank you for finding them. Outside the hospital windows, snow continued falling, Christmas Day fading into evening. The holiday decorations in the waiting room, a small artificial tree, paper snowflakes taped to windows, seemed simultaneously garish and inadequate for the gravity of the day's events. Laura rejoined them, phone in hand, expression grim but determined. Judge Harmon has issued an emergency protection order. Patricia Reynolds cannot legally approach these girls. I have officers en route to her residence now with a search warrant. What happens to Lucy and Lily tonight? Thomas asked, the question that had been hovering since the previous evening. Laura looked between Thomas and Katherine, weighing options. Normally emergency foster placement, but given the circumstances, the judge has authorized temporary custody with... She paused, looking at Katherine. With you, Ms. Mason, as you had a prior relationship with the family. Katherine's relief was palpable, but she glanced at Thomas with unexpected hesitation. They trust you, too, she said. They ran to you first. Thomas felt Jason's hand slip into his, a silent question. What would happen to the connection his son had formed with these girls who understood his loss? Perhaps, Katherine continued carefully, we could provide care together, at least for tonight. I have a small apartment, but there's room. In that moment, standing in the antiseptic hallway of a hospital on Christmas Day, Thomas felt something he hadn't experienced in 3 years. Connection to someone who understood what it meant to keep promises to the dead, To protect children, not your own. To rebuild something from fragments. That sounds like a good plan, he said simply. As they prepared to leave, Katherine turned to him, her voice low. This is just beginning, you know. Patricia Reynolds won't give up easily. She'll fight to get them back. Thomas thought of the branded letter on Lily's skin, of Lucy's protective stance, of the hollow fear in both their eyes. He touched the watch on his wrist, feeling Elizabeth's presence in that moment. Then we'll fight harder, he answered. Catherine's apartment occupied the third floor of a converted Victorian near Lakeside Community Hospital. Modest but welcoming, with medical textbooks stacked beside novels on overflowing shelves, framed sheet music on walls, and a well-worn upright piano commanding one corner of the living room. The twins moved through the space with cautious familiarity, touching objects, exchanging whispers. You remember my place? Katherine observed, watching them gravitate toward the instrument. Lucy traced the piano's edge with her fingertip. Mom brought us here for your birthday parties. And weekend pancakes, Lily added, her voice gaining confidence. You played songs from movies. Thomas and Jason stood awkwardly by the door, outsiders to these shared memories. Jason clutched his backpack containing hastily packed overnight essentials. The boy hadn't complained when Thomas explained they'd be staying with the twins at Catherine's place, at least until Patricia Reynolds was formally interviewed by police. Katherine directed them to the guest room with twin beds and a pull-out couch. It's not much, but we'll make it work, she offered, unfolding fresh linens from a hallway closet. Thomas caught her stifled yawn as she stretched for a blanket on the top shelf. When was your last shift? He asked, reaching above her to retrieve the item. 36 hours ago, she admitted. I was supposed to be off for the holiday, but a colleague had family emergency. I came straight here when I got the text about the girls. A knock at the door startled everyone. Katherine checked the peephole before opening it, revealing Laura Rodriguez, accompanied by a tall man in his 60s and carrying a worn leather briefcase. His silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses gave him a scholarly appearance at odds with his sharp, assessing gaze. Richard Bennett, he introduced himself, extending a hand first to Katherine, then Thomas. Judge Harmon asked me to assist with this case. Laura's expression remained professional, but grim. Patricia Reynolds wasn't home when officers arrived with the search warrant. Neither was her husband. The house appeared recently vacated. Drawers emptied, closets cleared. Richard set his briefcase on Katherine's dining table, removing a manila folder. Which means we need to move quickly. I've drafted emergency custody papers for both of you to sign. Judge Harmon will review them first thing tomorrow. Thomas glanced toward the hallway where Jason was helping the twins settle in. Both of us? Joint emergency custody, Richard clarified. Ms. Mason has the historical connection to the family. You have the initial intervention. Together you provide stability while we locate Patricia Reynolds. The attorney's efficiency left little room for argument as he spread documents across the table. Ms. Mason, you should know that Memorial Hospital Administration has already been contacted. Patricia Reynolds works in billing there, not direct patient care as the girls believed. Katherine's brow furrowed. That explains why I never ran into her, despite my searching, different departments, different buildings. She falsified her employment records, Laura added, checking her phone as new information arrived. She's not a registered nurse as she claimed, just administrative staff with access to patient databases. Thomas signed where indicated, mind racing ahead to practical concerns, work shifts, Jason's school routine, the modest savings that wouldn't stretch far with additional expenses. Katherine followed suit, her signature flowing in confident curves beneath his angular print. Richard collected the papers with practiced precision. These children now have legal protection and designated guardians. What they need next is stability, counseling, and patience. After the attorney and police chief departed, Thomas found himself alone with Katherine in her small kitchen. The fatigue of the extraordinary day settled between his shoulders as he leaned against the counter. I should take Jason home, he began, though the thought of separating the children after all they'd experienced felt wrong. We can come back tomorrow. Katherine filled an electric kettle, movements automatic despite her exhaustion. Please stay. The girls trust you. That's more valuable than extra space. From the guest room, Jason's voice carried. animated explanations of a video game, punctuated by the twins' tentative questions. The sound of children connecting despite trauma tightened Thomas's throat. "I can take the couch," he conceded. Catherine's smile revealed relief. "I have an early shift tomorrow. Could you?" "We'll be fine," Thomas assured her. "I've worked night stock at the grocery for months. I'm used to managing mornings solo." Her shoulders relaxed. "There's something you should see before I crash." Catherine retrieved a leather-bound album from a bookshelf, placing it on the kitchen island between them. The cover bore a simple title in gold embossing, Foster Family. "Marie made this," Catherine explained, opening to handwritten tapestries and carefully mounted photographs. "She gave it to me for safekeeping after David's parents died. They'd always feared Patricia might try something if anything happened to them." Thomas studied images of a laughing couple with infant twins, family picnics, first birthdays, piano recitals. Marie Foster shared her daughter's delicate features and blonde hair, while David's expression carried the same watchful intelligence now visible in Lucy's eyes. Catherine flipped to a page marked with a sticky note. "This is what I was looking for." A formal document rested in a plastic sleeve, a legal letter outlining the Fosters' wishes that Katherine Mason be appointed guardian of their children in the event of their deaths. A second page detailed a modest trust fund established for the twins' education. "Patricia challenged this," Catherine explained, turning to court documents. "Claimed I wasn't family, that blood should take precedence." The court agreed with her. "We weren't prepared for the legal battle. She hired expensive attorneys, portrayed me as a workaholic nurse with irregular hours, unsuitable for raising children." Thomas absorbed the implications. "She wanted control of the trust fund." Catherine nodded. "And got it. The twins haven't seen a penny. Meanwhile, Patricia bought a new BMW last year." Thomas turned another page, finding a newspaper clipping about the fatal car accident. Something in the hospital's kitchen shrank. "Wait, this happened on Lakewood Drive?" "Yes, we are my." "Elizabeth was treated at Memorial around that same time. I spent weeks in that hospital." Catherine's eyes widened. "I was assigned to pediatric oncology back then. We might have crossed paths." Thomas stared at the article, memory sharpening. Elizabeth mentioned a talented artist who painted murals in the children's ward. Said watching her work brought joy during dark times. "That was Marie," Catherine confirmed, voice hushed. "She volunteered there twice weekly." The revelation settled between them, invisible threads connecting their separate griefs long before this Christmas intersection. Catherine touched a photograph of Marie with the twins. "She would have found her way to your Elizabeth. Marie always sought out those who needed beauty most." The unexpected bridge between their pasts shifted something in Thomas's chest, not diminishing his loss, but contextualizing it within a larger pattern. People entering and exiting each other's orbits, leaving imprints even in passing. A soft chime from Catherine's phone broke the moment. Her expression darkened as she read the screen. Text from Memorial Administration. "Patricia accessed patient records yesterday afternoon, including mine. She has my address." Morning brought watery sunlight filtering through unfamiliar curtains. Thomas blinked awake on Catherine's couch, momentarily disoriented. The clattering of dishes drew him to the kitchen, where all three children worked with solemn concentration. Jason pouring orange juice, Lucy arranging toast on plates, Lily carefully slicing bananas with a butter knife. "We're making breakfast," Jason announced, pride evident. "Miss Catherine already left for work. She said to tell you there's coffee." Thomas poured himself a cup, observing the children's coordinated efforts. The twins moved with the practiced efficiency of those accustomed to household responsibilities beyond their years, while Jason mimicked their seriousness. "Any plans for today?" he asked, accepting a meticulously arranged plate. Lucy glanced at her sister before answering. "Could we maybe get our things from Aunt Patricia's house? Our special box under the floorboard?" Thomas considered the request against Richard Bennett's warnings about maintaining distance from Patricia Reynolds. "What's in this special box?" "Mom's necklace," Lily explained. "Dad's watch. Pictures they wouldn't let us keep. We hid them." The plea triggered protective instincts Thomas couldn't ignore. "I'll speak with Laura. If it's safe, we'll try." After breakfast, Richard Bennett called with the updates. Patricia and James Reynolds had been located at a hotel near the state line. Both were returning for questioning. The emergency custody arrangement had received Judge Harmon's approval. Patricia's attorney was already filing counter-arguments. The system moves slowly, even in emergency situations, Richard cautioned. Prepare for a marathon, not a sprint. Thomas relayed the twins' request regarding their hidden belongings. Richard's hesitation carried through the phone line. Wait until officers secure the scene. I'll arrange an escort later today. By mid-morning, Thomas faced a more immediate challenge. His phone vibrated with a calendar reminder. Afternoon shift at Darby's Hardware. One of 3 part-time jobs keeping his finances barely afloat. Calling in would mean sacrificing much-needed income. Attending would mean leaving the children alone or imposing further on Catherine's neighbors, who had already agreed to check in during her hospital shift. His indecision must have shown on his face. Lucy approached as he stared at his phone. Are you leaving us? The question carried layers of abandonment beyond the immediate circumstance. Thomas crouched to meet her eyes. I have work this afternoon, but I'll make arrangements so you're not alone. Lucy's shoulders tensed. We can stay by ourselves. We know how. The matter-of-fact assertion from an 8-year-old tightened Thomas's chest. That's not happening, not anymore. An hour later, Thomas arrived at Darby's Hardware with Jason and the twins in tow. Mr. Darby, a gruff septuagenarian with arthritis-gnarled hands and unexpected compassion, assessed the situation with a single glance. Back office has a TV and old sofa, he declared, leading the children through the stockroom. Nobody bothers you back here. Got some coloring books from when my grandkids visit. Thomas spent his shift alternating between customer service and checking on the children. The twins initially sat perfectly still, as if afraid movement might revoke the privilege of occupying space. Jason's easy comfort gradually influenced them, until Thomas returned to find all 3 sprawled on the floor, surrounded by colorful drawings. His phone rang just as his shift ended. Laura Rodriguez, voice tight with controlled anger. We need to meet, now. The police station conference room held an unexpected assembly. Laura, Richard Bennett, Catherine still in hospital scrubs, and a social worker Thomas hadn't met. Catherine's presence surprised him. She should have been mid-shift at Memorial. Laura closed the door firmly. Patricia Reynolds has filed a counter-complaint. She's alleging kidnapping, interference with custody, and child endangerment against both of you. Catherine's knuckles whitened around her coffee cup. That's absurd. It's strategic, Richard countered, removing documents from his briefcase. Patricia claims you conspired to take the children, that the abuse allegations are fabricated, and that Thomas has a history of mental instability following his wife's death. The accusation landed like a physical blow. Thomas's grief had never interfered with his parenting or judgment, despite the financial struggles that followed Elizabeth's passing. How would she know anything about my wife? Thomas demanded. Laura's expression darkened. Patricia accessed hospital records. She found connections between Catherine and Marie Foster, between Elizabeth's treatment and Marie's volunteer work. She's constructing a narrative that you two formed an alliance based on mutual obsession with the Fosters. The social worker, Ms. Jenkins, according to her identification badge, cleared her throat. Child Protective Services must take all allegations seriously. A home study has been ordered for both residences. The children will need to be interviewed separately. Catherine's professional composure cracked. They're already traumatized. Now you want to separate them for questioning? Standard procedure, Ms. Jenkins replied without inflection. Additionally, we have concerns about temporary custody being granted to individuals with limited resources and demanding work schedules. Thomas recognized the methodical dismantling of their suitability. Single father with multiple jobs, nurse with irregular hours, neither with significant financial stability. What's happened to the evidence? Thomas asked Laura directly. The medical documentation, the photographs. Being reviewed, Laura answered carefully. Patricia's attorney is suggesting the injuries were either self-inflicted or accidental. They're claiming Catherine's medical background could have influenced Dr. Chen's findings. Richard interrupted, years of courtroom experience evident in his measured tone. This is textbook intimidation. Patricia Reynolds has resources and connections. She's hoping you'll back down. Why fight so hard for children she abuses? Thomas questioned, frustration mounting. Control, Catherine responded, and money. The trust fund is substantial, not millions, but enough to maintain her lifestyle. If she loses custody, she loses access. Richard nodded. I've submitted a motion to freeze the trust pending investigation. That's likely what triggered this aggressive response. Ms. Jenkins made notes on a tablet. We'll schedule the home visits for tomorrow. The children will remain in emergency joint custody until the preliminary hearing next week. After she departed, Laura leaned forward, official demeanor softening. Off the record, Patricia's husband James seemed uncomfortable during questioning. There might be leverage there. Thomas considered the implications. The twins mentioned he travels frequently. Maybe he wasn't aware of the extent of abuse. Or chose not to see it, Katherine added bitterly. Complicity through absence. Richard gathered his documents. Focus on the children's immediate needs. Document everything. And prepare your finances for scrutiny. Patricia's team will attack any perceived instability. The warning accompanied Thomas through the remainder of the day as he collected the children from Mr. Darby's office and drove them to Katherine's apartment. His bank account held less than $2,000. His credit cards approached their limits. The rental house needed repairs he couldn't afford. Each part-time job provided flexibility but minimal income. How could he prove himself a suitable guardian when he barely managed his current responsibilities? Katherine arrived home exhausted, having completed her shift after the police station meeting. She dropped her bag by the door, smile not quite reaching her eyes as the twins rushed to greet her. Hospital administration asked about the situation. She explained quietly while the children washed up for dinner. They've suggested I take personal leave until this is resolved. Unpaid, of course. Thomas absorbed this new complication. Katherine's income suspended, his own inadequate. Richard mentioned Patricia has resources. What exactly does that mean? Katherine retrieved mail from her bag, sorting through envelopes. James Reynolds owns commercial real estate downtown. Patricia comes from old money, family name on buildings at the university. The information sank like stone. How could they compete against established wealth and influence? Thomas glanced toward the children setting the table together, Jason showing the twins where silverware belonged. Katherine followed his gaze, understanding the unspoken concern. Money isn't love. Any judge worth their robe knows that. Her certainty comforted him, despite the odds stacking against them. The evening progressed with attempted normalcy. Pizza delivery, a board game with modified rules to accommodate the twins' limited experience with such activities, careful conversations, avoiding mentions of tomorrow's interviews. After the children settled for bed, Katherine collapsed onto the couch beside Thomas, professional composure finally crumbling. I should have fought harder 2 years ago, hired better lawyers, taken out loans, done whatever necessary. Thomas watched her hands, capable hands accustomed to IVs and bandages, to soothing frightened children through procedures. Hands that now trembled, slightly with fatigue and worry. You tried, he offered to simply. Now we try together. Katherine's posture shifted, shoulder brushing his as she leaned back. Why did you stop that night? In the snow. The question pierced through circumstantial alliance to essential character. Thomas considered his answer carefully. Before Elizabeth died, I wouldn't have noticed them, he admitted. I was too focused on schedules, milestones, financial planning. She saw people, really saw them. After losing her, I started seeing differently. Katherine nodded, understanding blooming between them, not despite their losses, but because of how those losses had transformed them. Marie always said the world divides into those who turn away and those who turn toward, Katherine murmured. She would have liked you. The quiet acknowledgement wrapped around them as city lights flickered beyond the windows. A connection forming not from romantic attraction, but shared purpose in complementary wounds. The moment fractured as Katherine's phone chimed with a text. Her expression hardened as she read the message. Patricia is holding a press conference tomorrow morning, claiming grieving family members victimized by overzealous police and opportunistic strangers. Thomas absorbed this new tactical maneuver. She's taking this public. Controlling the narrative, Katherine agreed, will be painted as interfering outsiders while she presents herself as the concerned aunt. Thomas stood, pacing the small living room. We need to get ahead of this somehow, evidence that can't be twisted or denied. Katherine's eyes widened with sudden realization. The twins mentioned a hidden box at Patricia's house. What if there's more they've concealed? Children living with that when developed sophisticated hiding systems. The insight propelled Thomas toward his jacket. Laura mentioned officers securing the house for our visit. Let me call her. An hour later, Thomas, Catherine, and Laura stood in the driveway of a substantial colonial home in Lakeside's most exclusive neighborhood. Pristine landscaping surrounded the property despite December weather. Tasteful holiday decorations adorned windows and doors. Nothing externally suggested the horrors described by the twins. "We have 40 minutes, Laura explained, unlocking the front door with a warrant in hand. James Reynolds' attorney arranged supervised access while Patricia is detained for questioning. The interior presented immaculate organization. Cream carpets without stains, coordinated furniture without wear, family photographs displaying perfectly matched outfits and practiced smiles. The polished facade made the twins' accounts seem increasingly implausible. Lucy mentioned a floorboard in their bedroom, Thomas recalled, ascending plush carpeted stairs. The twins' room maintained the home's perfection. Identical beds with identical comforters, identical desks with identical lamps. Nothing personalized, nothing childlike. Catherine knelt, testing floorboards near the closet while Thomas examined the baseboards for signs of removal. Laura methodically photographed the room, focusing on details that contradicted normalcy: the absence of toys, the locks on outside of closet doors, the impersonal precision of the space. "Here," Catherine whispered, fingernails finding purchase on a slightly raised board. "This one's loose." Together they lifted the floorboard, revealing a small cavity beneath. Inside lay a child's shoebox wrapped in plastic to protect against moisture. Catherine withdrew it reverently, placing it on one of the identical beds before carefully removing the protective covering. The box contained treasures only children would value: photographs with bent corners, a woman's silver necklace bearing a treble clef pendant, a man's worn wristwatch stopped at 317, crayon drawings, a small diary with unicorn cover, and two identical friendship bracelets made of embroidery thread. Catherine lifted the necklace, recognition softening her features. "Marie wore this every day. David gave it to her when the twins were born." Thomas examined the watch. Not valuable in monetary terms, but incalculably precious to children preserving connections to parents. The contrast between these humble mementos and the sterile perfection of the bedroom intensified his resolve. Laura photographed each item, creating official documentation. "These support your case for emotional connection. The children preserve what mattered most to them." Catherine opened the diary hesitantly, respecting privacy while searching for potential evidence. Her sharp intake of breath drew Thomas's attention. "They documented it," she whispered, turning pages covered in childish handwriting. "Dates, punishments, everything." Laura gently took the diary, scanning entries. "This is significant. Children this age don't fabricate detailed accounts with consistent timelines." Thomas explored the room more thoroughly, now noticing subtle indicators of control: the absence of personal items beyond clothing, the identical hairbrushes with identical stray hairs, the pristine school books without doodles or dog ears. A sound from downstairs interrupted their search, the front door opening, male voices in the entryway. Laura tensed, hand moving instinctively toward her sidearm. "Stay here." She descended the stairs, leaving Thomas and Catherine frozen beside the evidence of stolen childhood. Through the open bedroom door, voices carried from below. Laura's professional tone interspersed with a man's responses, initially defensive, gradually subdued. Footsteps on the stairs announced Laura's return, accompanied by a tall man in his early 50s, silver threading through dark hair, expensive suit rumpled from travel. James Reynolds surveyed the room, gaze lingering on the exposed floorboard and collection of treasures. "They found it then," he observed quietly. Laura maintained her position between James and the others. "Mr. Reynolds has something to share." James loosened his tie, exhaustion evident in the slump of his shoulders. "Patricia told me the twins were disobedient, destructive, that they needed discipline." His gaze shifted to the diary Catherine still held. "I traveled constantly. By choice, I realize now. When I was home, the girls were always perfectly behaved, unnaturally so." "You knew," Catherine accused, protective instinct flaring. "I suspected," James corrected, removing his phone from an inner pocket, "until last month when I installed security cameras without Patricia's knowledge. I told her they were for external security only. He unlocked the device, navigating to a password-protected folder. I've been gathering evidence, planning to leave, to take the girls somewhere safe. I just needed enough documentation that she couldn't twist things against me. Thomas approached cautiously. Why are you showing us this now? Because Patricia's gone too far, James answered, extending the phone toward Laura. There are dozens of videos here, and there's something else you should know. Patricia isn't just abusing the twins, she's embezzling from their trust fund through a shell company. I found the paperwork last week. Laura accepted the phone, expression guarded but attentive. This could change everything, Mr. Reynolds. It's too late to undo what I allowed to happen, James acknowledged, gaze moving between Thomas and Katherine. But I can try to make it right. Katherine's medical training visibly warred with personal rage. Those children trusted you to protect them. I know, James responded, no defense offered. That's why I'm here now. Patricia doesn't know I've returned. She believes I'm securing offshore accounts for our extended vacation away from legal complications. Laura pocketed the phone, professionalism masking whatever personal judgment she might have formed. We'll need a formal statement, and you'll need protection once Patricia realizes you've provided evidence against her. James nodded, acceptance of consequences evident in his posture. I'll do whatever necessary. Those girls deserve better than what we gave them. The admission hung in the air. Too little, too late, yet potentially decisive in securing the twins' future safety. Thomas gathered the precious box while Katherine collected the diary, both understanding the significance of these artifacts beyond courtroom evidence. They represented identity preserved against systematic erasure, memory safeguarded when everything familiar was weaponized or denied. As they prepared to leave, James approached Thomas, voice lowered. You were the man who found them in the snow. Thomas nodded, uncertain whether hostility or gratitude would follow. Thank you, James continued simply, for seeing what I refused to see. The acknowledgement carried weight beyond the words themselves, recognition of moral courage from someone who had failed that same test repeatedly. Not absolution, but affirmation that choosing right action, even belatedly, remained possible. Outside, darkness had settled across the manicured lawn. Holiday lights illuminated adjacent homes, their cheerful colors at odds with the revelations within. Thomas carried the twins' treasure box carefully to Katherine's car, handling it with the reverence due sacred things. Laura secured James in her vehicle for transport to the station, evidence phone bagged and logged according to procedure. Her expression as she approached Thomas and Katherine conveyed cautious optimism. This significantly strengthens your position, she acknowledged. But Patricia will fight viciously when cornered. Prepare for tomorrow's hearing to get ugly. Katherine clutched the diary against her chest. What matters is that the girls won't have to testify immediately. This evidence speaks for them. Thomas watched James in the police car's back seat, a man whose moral compromises had enabled years of suffering, now offering a path toward justice. The complexity of human failure and potential redemption settled uncomfortably in his consciousness. We should get back to the children, he reminded Katherine. They'll worry if we're gone too long. As they drove toward Katherine's apartment, snow began falling again. Light flurries dancing in headlight beams. The city seemed quieter, insulated by weather and night. Thomas held the box of memories secure in his lap, understanding its value beyond any financial trust fund. Some inheritances couldn't be measured in dollars. Courage passed from parents to children, love preserved in simple objects. Identity maintained against deliberate erasure. The twins had protected these fragments of their true legacy through years of systematic cruelty. Now Thomas and Katherine would protect the twins, whatever tomorrow's hearing might bring. Katherine's hands tightened on the steering wheel as they approached her building. Patricia's car, she whispered, headlights illuminating a luxury sedan parked across the street from her apartment. She found us. Katherine cut the headlights, pulling into a side alley instead of her usual parking spot. The twins' treasure box shifted in Thomas's lap as they assessed the situation from the shadows. The children, Thomas whispered, pulse quickening. Your neighbor was watching them. Katherine's face drained of color in the dim light. Mrs. Winslow is 82. If Patricia forced her way in, the unfinished thought propelled them into action. Katherine called Laura while Thomas dialed Richard Bennett's emergency number. Neither answered, Both likely still processing James Reynolds and his evidence at the police station. We can't wait, Thomas decided, scanning the building for any unusual activity. The fire escape leads to your kitchen window. Catherine nodded, already moving. It'll be locked from inside. Then we don't use windows. We walk through the front doors if nothing's wrong. The strategy carried significant risk, but waiting for police might prove more dangerous. If Patricia had somehow gained access to Catherine's apartment, the children faced immediate threat from a woman desperate enough to drive directly to their sanctuary despite active restraining orders. Catherine's apartment occupied the third floor. The elevator's mechanical hum stretched Thomas's nerves as they ascended, each floor chime marking the distance between them and the children. Catherine clutched her phone, repeatedly trying Laura's number. She won't expect both of us, Thomas reasoned, steadying his voice. She likely followed from the police station, assumed we'd be detained longer. The elevator doors opened to a dimly lit hallway. Catherine's apartment stood at the far end, no visible disturbance from this distance. As they approached with deliberate casualness, Mrs. Winslow's door opened across the hall. The elderly woman beckoned them urgently. Thank goodness! A woman claiming to be the twins' aunt arrived 20 minutes ago, showed hospital ID, said there was a family emergency. Ice crystallized in Thomas's veins. Did you let her in? Certainly not, Mrs. Winslow bristled. Your instructions were clear, but she was persuasive. Said she'd call the authorities if I interfered with a medical emergency. I pretended to make a call to you for confirmation. That's when she left, saying she'd return with police. Catherine released a breath. The children are still inside? Playing board games when I checked 10 minutes ago. I've been watching your door since that woman left. Relief coursed through them momentarily, only to be replaced by renewed urgency. Patricia hadn't abandoned her objective. She'd merely changed tactics. Thomas squeezed Catherine's arm gently. Get the children. Pack essentials. I'll watch for her return. The apartment remained undisturbed when they entered. Jason and the twins constructing an elaborate pillow fort in the living room, unaware of the danger circling their temporary sanctuary. Catherine moved with a controlled calm, gathering children and necessities while Thomas established lookout at the window overlooking the street. Patricia's luxury sedan remained parked across the street, empty. Thomas scanned nearby vehicles, roof lines, entryways, any position offering surveillance of Catherine's building. The predatory patience evident in Patricia's strategy chilled him more than any direct confrontation. She was hunting methodically, gathering reinforcements. His phone vibrated. Richard Bennett calling back. The attorney listened to Thomas's rapid explanation before interrupting with characteristic precision. She's escalating dangerously. Laura's processing James Reynolds' statement in evidence now, but we can expedite protective custody. There's a safe house used for domestic violence cases. I'll text the address. Go now, avoid main roads. Catherine emerged from the bedroom with 3 backpacks and 3 solemn children. No questions from the twins. They recognized the signs of necessary flight. Jason looked to his father for reassurance, receiving only a tight smile in return. Adventure time, Thomas explained, voice deliberately light. Middle of the night road trip. The fire escape provided their exit, avoiding potential watchers at main entrances. Thomas carried the twins' treasure plus Jason's backpack, while Catherine managed the twins and remaining supplies. The January night bit through inadequate layers as they descended metal stairs into the back alley. Catherine's car remained partially hidden between dumpsters, invisible from the street. Thomas scanned for surveillance while Catherine secured the children in back seats. The twins huddled together, instinctively minimizing space, while Jason watched with wide-eyed alertness. Where are we going? Lucy finally asked, as Catherine navigated back streets, headlights still dark until they reached a sufficiently distant avenue. Somewhere safe, Catherine answered, checking her mirrors obsessively. A special house where no one can find us tonight. Thomas monitored cross streets and traffic patterns, alert for vehicles matching Patricia's or any car maintaining consistent distance behind them. Paranoia felt justified given the evening's revelations. Patricia Reynolds had demonstrated both resources and determination, hospital connections, financial leverage, calculated pursuit despite legal barriers. The safe house stood on the outskirts of Lakeside, a modest ranch-style home with unremarkable features and reinforced security. Motion sensor lights illuminated their arrival, accompanied by the appearance of a uniformed officer at the front door. "Bennett called ahead," the officer explained, checking identification before allowing entry. "2 patrol cars will rotate surveillance tonight. No one approaches without clearance." The interior offered functional comfort rather than homey warmth. Basic furnishings, secured windows, panic buttons installed beside light switches. The children absorbed these details with varying reactions, the twins categorizing exits and defensive positions through hard-won instinct, Jason approaching the situation as an unexpected adventure. Katherine established them in bedrooms while Thomas conferred with the officer, providing Patricia's vehicle description and reviewing security protocols. By the time he joined the others, Katherine had transformed the institutional kitchen into something approaching normalcy. Hot chocolate steaming in mismatched mugs, peanut butter sandwiches arranged on paper plates. "Like camping inside," she explained to Jason, whose enthusiasm lifted the twins' spirits incrementally. Thomas's phone buzzed with updates from Laura, James Reynolds providing comprehensive testimony, financial records revealing systematic theft from the trust fund, security footage documenting abuse. The evidence accumulating against Patricia strengthened their position substantially. Yet Thomas couldn't shake the foreboding that pursued them to this fortified sanctuary. "Will she find us here?" Lucy asked after the children had been settled into twin beds in a shared room, Jason on a folding cot between them. The question lacked hysteria or terror, just practical assessment from a child accustomed to calculating threats. Thomas sat on the edge of her bed, choosing honesty over false comfort. "This place is specifically designed to keep people safe from those who might hurt them. Officers are watching outside all night." Lily's voice emerged from beneath blankets pulled to her chin. "She always finds us." The quiet certainty in those 4 words revealed the psychological damage inflicted beyond physical abuse. The omnipotent power Patricia had constructed in the children's minds. Breaking that hold would require more than physical distance or legal declarations. "Not anymore," Thomas promised, retrieving the treasure box from beside the door. "We found something today. Something you kept safe all this time." The twins sat up simultaneously as he placed the box between them. Lucy reached for it hesitantly, as if fearing it might dissolve upon contact. When her fingers touched the worn cardboard, something shifted in her expression. Hope tenuous but undeniable. Together, the sisters opened their preserved past. Photographs, keepsakes, memories Patricia had attempted to eradicate. Jason watched respectfully as they handled each item with reverence, explaining connections to parents they refused to forget, despite systematic efforts to erase those bonds. "Mom's necklace," Lily whispered, silver treble clef catching light as she lifted it. "She wore it for piano recitals." "Dad's watch," Lucy added, winding the timepiece gently. "It stopped when the accident happened. We didn't want to fix it." Katherine appeared in the doorway, witnessing this resurrection of identity with glistening eyes. Thomas met her gaze across the room, mutual understanding flowing between them, witnessing children reclaiming stolen narrative through preserved artifacts. After the children finally surrendered to exhaustion, Thomas and Katherine retreated to the living room, voices low despite secure walls. "Court hearing tomorrow," Katherine reminded him, reviewing emergency notifications from Richard Bennett. 9 a.m. sharp, Patricia's attorney has filed motions to dismiss all charges, claiming parental alienation and custody interference. Thomas absorbed this information while monitoring his phone for updates from Laura. James's evidence changes the equation. She can't dismiss video documentation or financial fraud. Katherine twisted Marie's friendship bracelet around her wrist, a twin to the ones discovered in the treasure box. Patricia excels at manipulating perception. She'll arrive perfectly composed, playing grieving aunt whose troubled nieces were influenced by opportunistic strangers. "Then we arrive more prepared," Thomas countered, mapping strategy. "Richard should request the videos be played in open court. No interpretation possible when viewing raw footage." Their planning continued until exhaustion demanded temporary surrender. Katherine took the couch while Thomas claimed the oversized recliner, neither truly sleeping, alertness hardwired after days of escalating threat. Dawn arrived with Richard Bennett on their doorstep, accompanied by Laura Rodriguez. Both brought crucial updates. James Reynolds had provided comprehensive testimony through the night. Financial forensics had traced systematic theft from the twins' trust fund. Patricia's attempt to file countercharges had been temporarily blocked by evidence of her restraining order violation. "She's cornered," Laura explained, accepting coffee from Katherine, "and that makes her unpredictable." Richard arranged documents on the kitchen table with methodical precision. "Judge Wilson is presiding. She specializes in family court cases involving abuse. Patricia's attorney requested closed proceedings, but given the financial crimes component, it's been denied." "What about the children?" Thomas asked, watching the hallway for signs of waking. "They won't testify today," Richard assured him. "Medical evidence and James's security footage provides sufficient grounds for continued protective custody. The practicalities of court preparations consume the next hour. Appropriate clothing sourced from hastily packed bags, written statements reviewed, transportation arrangements confirmed with police escort." Throughout these logistics, Thomas monitored the children. Jason's nervous excitement at riding in a police car contrasting with the twins' quiet resignation to another institutional proceeding, controlling their fate. Laura departed first, returning to final evidence processing. Richard outlined courtroom positioning and procedural expectations. Patricia will likely arrive with her attorney and selected supporters, church members, colleagues, community figures willing to testify to her character. Appear confident but not confrontational. The courthouse loomed against morning sky, limestone columns and broad steps projecting institutional authority. Police cruisers flanked their arrival point, officers stationed conspicuously as Richard had arranged. Thomas scanned the perimeter, identifying Patricia's luxury sedan among vehicles in the judicial parking area. "She's already here," he noted, helping Lily from the car. Katherine gathered the children close as they ascended courthouse steps. "Remember, you'll wait with Mrs. Wilson from Victim Services. We'll see you right after." The twins nodded with synchronized understanding. Jason squeezed his father's hand before following the court-appointed guardian toward a separate waiting area, his protective instinct toward his new friends evident in backward glances. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with restrained energy. Richard guided them to seats beside Laura, who maintained professional neutrality despite the tension radiating through the wood-paneled space. Across the center aisle, Patricia Reynolds sat beside her attorney, a silver-haired man whose bespoke suit and monogrammed cufflinks advertised fees beyond most litigants' resources. Patricia herself presented impeccable composure. Hair elegantly styled, navy dress suggesting appropriate solemnity, hands folded demurely on the table before her. Nothing in her appearance suggested a woman who branded children with heated metal or locked them in basement rooms for imagined transgressions. James Reynolds occupied a separate section, physically distanced from his wife by both legal requirement and moral awakening. His testimony had broken overnight, leading to splashed headlines across local media. "Prominent businessman exposes wife's child abuse." Patricia had deliberately avoided acknowledging his presence, though her spine stiffened perceptibly when he entered. Judge Wilson arrived with a minimal ceremony. A black woman in her 60s whose no-nonsense reputation preceded her into the courtroom. Her assessment of assembled parties revealed nothing as she established procedural guidelines and clarified the hearing's purpose. "This court will determine immediate custody arrangements and protective orders concerning Lucy and Lily Foster," she began, reviewing documents without glancing up. "Given the nature of allegations and supporting evidence, standard procedures have been expedited." Patricia's attorney rose first, voice calibrated for maximum reasonableness. "Your Honor, my client has been subjected to extraordinary harassment based on manipulated evidence and coordinated testimony. These children were essentially kidnapped by individuals with no legal relationship or standing." The character assassination continued methodically. Thomas portrayed as mentally unstable following personal tragedy, Katherine described as obsessively attached to her deceased friend's children, both characterized as interfering with legitimate family relationships for personal gratification. Thomas maintained expressionless composure throughout, though his knuckles whitened against the wooden bench. Katherine's medical training served her similarly, professional detachment masking the rage simmering beneath. Richard countered with precision once permitted response. "Your Honor, the documented evidence renders these characterizations moot." Medical examination revealed systematic abuse, including second-degree burns forming the letter P, Patricia's initial literally branded onto a child's body. The courtroom's atmosphere shifted perceptibly at this detail. Patricia's attorney attempted interruption, claiming inflammatory language, but Judge Wilson silenced him with a raised hand. "The court has reviewed medical documentation," she confirmed. "Proceed, counselor." Richard continued methodically, building foundations before introducing James Reynolds' testimony and financial findings. When he finally requested the security footage be played, Patricia's mask of composure fractured visibly. "Objection!" her attorney barked, rising abruptly. "This footage was obtained illegally without my client's knowledge or consent. It constitutes invasion of privacy and cannot be admitted." Judge Wilson reviewed the filing before responding. Mr. Reynolds owned the property and installed security systems within his legal rights. Objection overruled. The courtroom screens illuminated with footage Thomas and Katherine hadn't yet seen. Clinical documentation of calculated cruelty. Patricia Reynolds, immaculately dressed, dragging Lucy by her hair across kitchen tile. Patricia Reynolds forcing Lily's hand onto a heated stovetop element while explaining calmly what would happen if chores remained incomplete. Patricia Reynolds locking both children in a basement utility room, activating electronic deadbolts before departing for a charity function, perfectly coiffed and composed. Katherine's hand found Thomas's as the evidence unfolded, her fingers ice cold against his palm. Across the courtroom, Patricia maintained rigid posture despite the mounting destruction of her carefully constructed facade. James Reynolds testified next, voice steady despite evident emotional strain. He detailed progressive awareness of his wife's behavior, his own complicity through absence and denial, the financial discoveries that finally shattered willful ignorance. Patricia created shell corporations to systematically drain the children's trust fund, he explained, presenting documentation. Approximately $400,000 diverted to personal accounts and luxury purchases. The financial crimes elevated proceedings beyond family court jurisdictions, introducing criminal components that Patricia's attorney couldn't deflect with procedural objections. Each revelation tightened legal constraints around her carefully maintained public image. Judge Wilson called a brief recess before ruling, during which Richard conferred with Laura regarding additional protective measures. Thomas watched Patricia across the courtroom, her whispered consultations with legal counsel growing increasingly agitated, composure cracking visibly beneath compounding evidence. When proceedings resumed, Judge Wilson delivered her decision without preamble. This court grants emergency protective custody to Katherine Mason and Thomas Grayson for a period of 6 months, during which comprehensive home studies and psychological evaluations will determine permanent placement recommendations. Patricia's controlled facade shattered. "They're manipulating you," she hissed, rising despite her attorney's restraining hand. "Those ungrateful brats have lied from the beginning. After everything I sacrificed." "Ms. Reynolds," Judge Wilson interrupted, voice cutting like steel. "Further outbursts will result in contempt charges. This court has reviewed overwhelming evidence of physical abuse, psychological torture, and financial exploitation. Criminal charges are being processed separately." Patricia's expression transformed, calculation replacing outrage as she assessed remaining options. Thomas recognized the shift from his years analyzing financial discrepancies, a cornered mind identifying potential escape routes. "My clients request supervised visitation with the children today," Richard stated, following predetermined strategy, "to provide reassurance after these proceedings." Judge Wilson granted the request while finalizing scheduling for subsequent hearings. The procedural conclusion lacked dramatic resolution, administrative details replacing emotional confrontation as legal machinery advanced methodically toward justice. Thomas and Katherine exited the courtroom alongside Richard, relief tempered by awareness that Patricia remained temporarily free despite mounting charges. Financial crimes investigation would proceed separately from abuse allegations, both requiring extensive evidence processing before formal arraignment. "We won this round decisively," Richard assured them as they approached the victim services area where the children waited. Patricia's attorney will advise accepting plea arrangements rather than facing public trial with this evidence. Katherine's relief manifested physically. tension releasing from shoulders maintained rigidly throughout proceedings. The children are safe? That's what matters most. The reunion with Jason and the twins unfolded with tentative optimism. Explanations of continued protection simplified for young understanding, promises of stability reinforced with concrete details. The twins absorbed information with characteristic watchfulness, processing implications through their unique survival framework. "So we stay together?" Lily confirmed, standing slightly behind her sister. "With you and Mr. Thomas?" Catherine knelt to eye level, professional caution balanced against emotional truth. "Yes, for the foreseeable future, that's the plan." The careful answer acknowledged ongoing legal processes without promising permanence beyond judicial authority. Thomas recognized the deliberate limitation, protecting children from disappointment while remaining truthful about complex realities. "Let's go home," he suggested, gathering backpacks distributed through the waiting area. Actual home, not the safe house. The decision carried calculated risk, but continuing to live defensively would only reinforce the twins' hypervigilance. Catherine's apartment offered familiar comfort after courthouse formality, a necessary return to normalcy despite Patricia's unresolved threat. Richard accompanied them to the parking garage, reviewing security recommendations and scheduling upcoming depositions. Laura would coordinate additional patrols past Catherine's building for the immediate future. The apparatus of protection continued functioning around them, institutional gears engaged by morning's proceedings. As they approached Catherine's car, Thomas noticed a custodial worker watching their progress too intently. Radio clutched unnecessarily in gloved hand. The observation triggered warning signals. Service personnel wouldn't monitor specific individuals, wouldn't maintain such focused attention on children. Thomas shifted position, placing himself between the worker and their group. "Catherine," he murmured, voice deliberately casual, "take the children to the car. Now." The instruction registered immediately. Catherine gathered all three children with practiced efficiency, continuing toward the vehicle without betraying alarm. Thomas maintained position, cataloging details that confirmed mounting suspicion: wrong uniform color for courthouse maintenance, radio positioned incorrectly for standard operations, recognition flashing in the observer's eyes when noticing Thomas's attention. Richard Bennett registered the situation simultaneously, already reaching for his phone. "Security breach," he spoke into the device, maintaining visual contact with the suspicious figure. The worker abandoned pretense, dropping the maintenance cart and sprinting toward the garage exit. Thomas caught a glimpse of communication equipment beneath the discarded uniform jacket. Surveillance operation rather than direct threat, but connected unmistakably to Patricia's resources. Private investigator, Richard surmised, watching security personnel pursue the fleeing figure. Patricia's gathering ammunition for counter-narratives. The incident accelerated their departure from courthouse grounds. Catherine drove with heightened vigilance, route home interspersed with unnecessary turns and doubled-back pathways to identify potential surveillance. The children remained silent throughout, the twins recognizing familiar evasion tactics, Jason absorbing new understanding of genuine threat. Catherine's apartment building appeared unchanged upon their return, though Thomas surveyed surroundings with newfound suspicion before allowing the children inside. The practical implications of maintaining constant vigilance while rebuilding normal routines presented considerable challenge, balancing necessary protection against psychological damage from perpetual defensiveness. 2 weeks passed in provisional normalcy. Catherine returned to hospital shifts with adjusted scheduling. Thomas restructured his employment arrangements with unexpected support from Mr. Darby, who offered management training and increased responsibility at the hardware store. The children established hesitant routines. School enrollment transferred with specialized counseling support. Afternoon homework sessions at Catherine's dining table. Weekends alternating between her apartment and Thomas's rental house. The twins' behavior evolved gradually. Incremental relaxation of hypervigilance, occasional spontaneous laughter, decreased flinching at sudden movements or loud noises. Lucy demonstrated protective fierceness toward both Jason and Lily, while Lily revealed musical talent when Catherine reintroduced piano lessons. Thomas observed these developments with cautious optimism, cataloging progress against the backdrop of ongoing legal proceedings. Patricia remained free on bail despite multiple charges, her public persona shifting from grieving aunt to persecuted victim of overzealous prosecution. Her attorney orchestrated strategic media appearances presenting alternative narratives, troubled children with behavioral issues, vindictive brother-in-law fabricating evidence, financial discrepancies explained as investment strategies misunderstood by authorities. 4 months into their temporary guardianship, the doorbell rang during Saturday breakfast at Catherine's apartment. Thomas answered cautiously, finding Laura Rodriguez in street clothes rather than uniform. "It's over," she announced without preamble. "Patricia Reynolds took a plea deal yesterday. Substantial prison time, no possibility of future custody, complete restoration of the trust fund." The information rippled through the apartment as Catherine joined them, children remaining at the breakfast table, but clearly monitoring adult conversation. "Why now?" Thomas questioned. "She's fought every step." "Evidence kept mounting," Laura explained, accepting coffee as she joined them in the kitchen. "Financial forensics uncovered offshore accounts. Child Services found previous reports from schools that were mysteriously buried. Then yesterday, her attorney received notification that the prosecution had located a former household employee willing to testify about witnessed abuse." Catherine processed this information with professional objectivity tempered by personal investment. She calculated odds and accepted inevitable defeat. 20 years minimum, Laura confirmed. No contact with the children even after release. James Reynolds has surrendered all parental claims despite lack of direct involvement in the abuse. He's providing additional funds for the girl's future beyond the restored trust. The news should have triggered unmitigated celebration, yet Thomas recognized complicated emotions beneath surface relief. Patricia's sentencing provided necessary justice without addressing deeper psychological impacts or future uncertainties. Legal resolution didn't automatically heal traumatic wounds or establish permanent stability. Laura departed after reviewing final procedural details. Thomas watched the children processing this development in their characteristic ways. Jason with straightforward satisfaction at villains receiving appropriate punishment. Lucy with skeptical assessment of potential loopholes. Lily with quiet attention to adult emotional cues. "Does this mean we stay with you and Miss Catherine forever now?" Jason finally asked, voicing the question all three children clearly harbored. Thomas and Catherine exchanged glances, unspoken communication flowing between them after months of shared purpose. Their initial emergency alliance had evolved into effective partnership, complementary strengths, supporting children's recovery while navigating complex systems. "That's what we're hoping for," Thomas answered honestly. "There are more steps involved, but that's our goal." The measured response satisfied Jason while respecting the twins' hard-earned wariness regarding adult promises. Catherine initiated normal Saturday activities, weekly shopping expedition, afternoon at the community center pool, pizza dinner with board games. Routine reestablished safety more effectively than extended discussion of legal proceedings children only partially understood. Later that evening, after the children had settled into sleep, Thomas and Catherine sat on her small balcony, city lights providing backdrop to necessary conversation. "Richard mentioned the home study results arrive next week," Catherine began, hands wrapped around cooling tea. "Final custody determination follows shortly after." Thomas nodded, watching stars emerge above urban glow. "We should discuss practicalities. Your apartment works temporarily, but 3 children need more space. My rental's too small as well." "I've been looking at houses," Catherine admitted. "Nothing fancy, but 3 bedrooms minimum, yard for summer, good school district. The housing market in Lakeside is reasonable compared to neighboring counties." The casual revelation represented significant commitment, planning beyond immediate crisis toward permanent restructuring. Thomas felt something shift in his chest, recognition that their partnership had evolved beyond circumstantial alliance toward deliberate future building. "I found property listings too," he confessed. "Ranch-style houses mainly, thinking about accessibility for when Mrs. Winslow visits. She's practically adopted all 3 children at this point." Catherine smiled, genuine warmth replacing professional composure. "We're really doing this, aren't we? Building something completely unexpected from terrible circumstances." Thomas considered the journey from Christmas Eve discovery to present moment. Connections formed through crisis, healing facilitated through shared purpose, family constructed from fragments, rather than traditional foundations. Some people say miracles don't happen anymore, he reflected, Elizabeth's watch catching moonlight on his wrist. But I think they do. They just look like ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Catherine's hand found his in comfortable familiarity, fingers interlacing without romantic pretense. Partnership based in mutual respect and common objective. Marie always said the world divides into those who turn away and those who turn toward. We turn toward. 10 months after finding twin girls in Christmas snow, Thomas signed final adoption papers alongside Catherine in Judge Wilson's chambers. The legal documentation formalized reality already established through daily lived experience. Meals shared, homework supervised, nightmares soothed, small victories celebrated across seasons of recovery. Lily and Lucy Foster became Lily and Lucy Mason Grayson, their hyphenated surname representing dual guardianship maintained even as Thomas and Catherine developed personal relationship beyond parental partnership. Jason thrived with expanded family, protective brotherhood replacing only child solitude. The modest house they purchased together stood halfway between their previous residences. 4 bedrooms, fenced backyard, piano installed in the front room, kitchen large enough for family cooking projects. Not luxurious by conventional standards, yet infinitely wealthy in essential metrics: safety, connection, opportunity for healing. 1 year exactly after that transformative Christmas Eve, Thomas drove the familiar route through downtown Lakeside, holiday lights reflecting off fresh snow. Catherine sat beside him, the 3 children buckled in back seats, headed toward the annual Christmas tree lighting in Town Square. As they approached the coffee shop where Thomas had first discovered the twins, Catherine squeezed his hand gently. "Should we stop?" Thomas nodded, understanding the significance of revisiting beginnings with perspective gained through intervening months. Bailey's coffee shop had reopened under new management, warm light spilling from windows that had been dark the previous Christmas. Inside, holiday decorations complemented the aroma of cinnamon and chocolate. The children claimed a corner table while Catherine and Thomas ordered hot beverages. Through the window, snow continued falling, identical weather to the night that had altered all their lives irreversibly. Catherine settled at the piano placed near the shop's front window, part of the new owner's vision for community gathering space. Her fingers found familiar keys, beginning the gentle introduction to Silent Night. Thomas watched his expanded family from beside the counter. Jason helping the twins unwrap peppermint stir sticks, Lily humming along with Catherine's playing, Lucy's watchful gaze softened by growing trust in permanent safety. Outside, holiday shoppers hurried past illuminated storefronts, unaware of the reconstructed universe contained within ordinary coffee shop walls. Thomas touched Elizabeth's watch reflexively, feeling her presence in this moment of completion. "I kept my promise," he whispered, words meant for absent witnesses. Then he gathered steaming mugs and rejoined his family, closing the circle that had begun in desperate circumstances and culminated in unexpected wholeness. Catherine's music provided backdrop as snow continued falling, Christmas lights reflecting through window glass, time suspended in perfect equilibrium between painful past and hopeful future. In that ordinary moment of 5 people sharing hot chocolate in a neighborhood coffee shop, Thomas recognized the extraordinary miracle they had built together. A family constructed not from obligation or biology, but deliberate choice to turn toward rather than away from human need. Some circles completed perfectly, even those beginning with broken pieces.